What's up, y'all? It's Nick Johnson, your favorite sports YouTube journalist here, back in here with another video. And today, I'm going to be discussing the state of the Houston Rockets. Now, before I get started, make sure to hit the like and subscribe button. Make sure to hit that bell button where you get my notifications and when I'm going to upload my next video. And of course, once I get to the end, we'll discuss it in the comment section. So, I want to talk the Houston Rockets. And so far, until proven otherwise, they are an absolute disaster. For now, they are. I mean, beforehand, it was like, they're bound to win an NBA title and whatnot. But now they're an absolute garbage disaster. And James Harden is the centerpiece of that. And more importantly, he's like the root of it. So before I explain that, let's give you a little backstory. As y'all remember, it was in the 2012 offseason. The Oklahoma City Thunder have traded away James Harden, who was the reigning Sixth Man of the Year winner from that previous season, along with a couple of players, to the Houston Rockets in a package that included Kevin Martin, Jeremy Lamb, and a couple of first-round picks. One of them turned out to be Steven Adams. As we all remember, James Harden spent like the first, 4 seasons. No, I take that lie back. Let's see, 1, 2, 3. Rather, the first 3 seasons of his NBA career with the Oklahoma City Thunder, where he was the sixth man. Because you had a very young and rising Oklahoma City squad that also had a young, very young Kevin Durant and a very young Russell Westbrook. And with those three, they made it all the way to the 2012 NBA Finals, where they would easily lose in 5 games to the big three Miami Heat of LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, and Chris Bosh. You remember those guys. So, fast forward to August of 2012, James Harden gets traded because of a contract situation with Oklahoma City that made OKC very hesitant to go over the salary cap to keep Harden for the next couple years. So, and of course, the way NBA history turned out since then, or what could have been, had OKC given the nod to James Harden to give him that extension that he really deserved with higher value, then they would be in a good position because the salary cap spike would increase for a couple years, which would give all the teams in the world to give them the money that they can use to sign formidable superstars. But that's a video for another time, and we'll just explain more on the salary cap spike and how it's turned out since then. But anyways, back to Harden. He gets traded to Houston, and immediately he took them to the playoffs single-handedly in his first year in Houston. Now, of course, from then on, it would begin like an 8-year streak in which Houston would make the playoffs with James Harden in tow. And of course, they made it to the first round. Got bounced in the series opener against OKC, his former squad, obviously. Then the following year, they added Dwight Howard to play alongside James Harden. Of course, they would lose in the second round and the first round again, this time to the Portland Trailblazers, courtesy of Damian Lillard's series-winning shot. Then the following year, with the second year of the Dwight Howard and James Harden era, with Dwight Howard, they would make it all the way to the 2015 Western Conference Finals, where they suffered a gentleman's sweep of 5 games defeat at the hands of the eventual NBA champion Golden State Warriors. Now, that's another topic that I'm going to get into later on. So, okay, and then the following year, they get bounced in the, the first or second round in Dwight Howard's final year with them, and he gets ousted. And of course, during this time period, Kevin McHale would get fired and be replaced by Mike D'Antoni, And with D'Antoni, James Harden flourished under D'Antoni's system. And of course, after Dwight Howard's third year, he would leave the team, but on a sour note, because people were pointing as Dwight Howard to blame. He refuses to do the pick and roll as he should have, and whatnot. So we was looking to James Harden to see how he can do. And now after that, he was by himself. Mike D'Antoni gave him the perfect system that he can gel under. They gave him the ball more. His usage went through the roof. He was scoring out of his mind every single time. And like almost every single year since he's arrived, he's led the team and he's helped the Rockets lead the team in 3-point attempts and 3-pointers made. All that stuff. because he's a master of the three-point shot. You know, the infamous step-back three-point jump shot that he made throughout his entire career. I'm just checking the time. And from that point, it didn't really cross our mind, but you could see like a small glimpse of how we view James Harden right now. But anyways, after Dwight Howard left, you were by yourself and you had a bunch of role players, in which I feel like, looking back in it now, was like the perfect scenario for him. Like he is just by himself, a whole bunch of shooters, role players, system, all that. And what happened? A mid-round or a mid-seed or a lower seed team that basically got blown off the water in the second round at the hands of the San Antonio Spurs. Especially in the elimination game in Game 6 in Houston, where the Rockets got blown out by almost 40 points. Almost 40 points. And because of that, that's when we got to turn to the table and say, hey, we got to give him some help because this ain't cutting it. That's like the perfect system for him, perfect scenario, and he still lost. So, in the 2017 offseason, they pulled off a blockbuster trade packaging Patrick Beverley and Montrezl Harrell and a whole bunch of players in a 7-player deal to the Los Angeles Clippers in exchange for the point god, one of the greatest point guards of all time, in Chris Paul. Now, at the time, many people were questioning the fit and what would be the chemistry like between Harden and CP3, because CP3 has always been, throughout his career, outside of being known for being the greatest point guard of all time, he was the floor general, the facilitator, a legendary shot creator, knows how to generate an offense, set up screens, cut to the rim, all that. And then you have James Harden, who's been handling the ball more as of late, but kind of less of that. So the question in fit and chemistry right there was a bit of a question. But despite that, they helped Houston win like more than 60 games, cruise to the number 1 seed in the Western Conference, and CP3 and James Harden would make it all the way to the Western Conference Finals that year in the summer 2018. And there was just like one win away from getting to the NBA Finals and possibly demolishing the Cleveland Cavaliers in that year's finals anyway. Of course, in Game 5 in Houston, when Houston won to take a 3-2 series lead, Chris Paul injured his hamstring and was out for the next 2 games. Golden State easily blew him off the water in the 6th game in the old Oracle Arena in Oakland. And Game 7 in Houston. Now's the time for James Harden to shine. Take us there. Show us what you're made of. This is your moment. And he was a lame duck. Just like in Game 6 in San Antonio, where he scored 10 points in that game. And just like, 3 of 12 or 2 of 12 from the field. He was just as bad or even worse in that Game 7 loss to Golden State. Yeah, they had Kevin Durant, but still, he was that bad. He was like 2 for 16 from the field total and 2 for 13 from three-point range. Both of those shots that he made the entire game was three-pointers. And he was a lame duck throughout. And Houston would see its season end there. Fast forward to the following season, 18-19 season. James Harden gets hurt. Chris Paul was by himself. It was kind of like, in the bottom of the standings, but when he came back, he was kind of like himself. And when Chris Paul got hurt, same scenario. Now, both of them are healthy, made it to the playoffs, and it was kind of the same result against Golden State. This time it was in the second round. They lost the first 3, won the next 2 after KD was hurt, and then still got blown out of the water in Game 6 in Houston. And then after that, you hear reports of a friction between Paul and Harden, where Paul was asking to be traded, and Harden basically giving the Rockets the ultimatum, saying it's either him or me. You can't have us both. So you do know that relationship pretty much ended right there. Fast forward to the summer of last year, not this past summer, but the summer prior, 2019, obviously, which I'm going to explain and sometime later. The Rockets front office gave in to his demands, basically trading away Chris Paul and a whole bunch of first-round draft picks to the Oklahoma City Thunder in exchange for Harden's old teammate in OKC, Russell Westbrook, another all-star point guard and my bound future Hall of Famer. Basically, at that time, those two guys had the worst trade values in the league because both were on terrible contracts, players were declining, and whatnot. And Russell Westbrook was being seen as like a rising villain. Well, not like that, but like more of a problematic piece in OKC. So you got two immovable contracts, and they just basically traded each other for one another in OKC and Houston. So you remove Chris Paul, you bring in Russell Westbrook, and now here you are. And at the time, it would seem like, oh, the Rockets are going to cruise through the top three seeds in the Western Conference. They're a legitimate title contender. But in hindsight, you had that feeling where the fit was even more questionable at the time that the Rockets got Chris Paul. So this is even more questionable fit because you got two guys that are much more systems within themselves, where Westbrook was more of a stat padding chaser and not like a true legitimate point guard facilitator. And Harden just basically wants the ball in his hands all the time. Now, when last season started, between like the first 3 months of last season, Harden was putting up usual Harden numbers while Westbrook was kind of like the less of that. Harden was averaging 32 a game while Westbrook was averaging like what? Halfway over 20 points. So the fit was kind of questionable there. But then the calendar shift to 2020 this year, which is almost over, thank God. Westbrook, for the next 3 months, would turn up the heat. He would be averaging 30 points, 31 points to be exact, while Harden was averaging 29. That's still Harden-like, but you could see how much that changed within them because they were starting to go having Westbrook share the floor more, use the ball more than Harden was. So because of that, Harden's production slightly dipped and had less efficiency. You just kind of tell, like, this isn't going to work. And, of course, the season suspended play. And the Rockets, with Westbrook and Harden, of course, Westbrook had to sit out for a while because of injury on his knee, but was back in time for at least to close out remaining games of the first round against OKC that had Chris Paul, and Paul had a better season in OKC than he had in Houston. All-star, whatnot. And, of course, the Rockets would win in 7 games, but OKC took him to the limit, as we all know it. And come the following series, the second round against the now reigning NBA champion Los Angeles Lakers with LeBron James and Anthony Davis, the Rockets took the first game after both Harden and Westbrook scored 30 points. But the Lakers exposed the whole small ball matchup of Houston. That was like the new Daryl Morey system, the small ball lineup. Hence the reason why they traded away Clint Capella to the Atlanta Hawks, their best rim protector and best center, to the Atlanta Hawks for power forward Robert Covington. And they had a 6'7" power forward in PJ Tucker play the center. That right there pretty much tells you exactly how messed up the Rockets did big time. The Rockets messed up by going small ball, knowing that they were going up against a big oriented team in the Lakers. And they played the small ball matchup with the Rockets, and they got exposed. The Rockets got exposed. They were double teaming James Harden for the rest of the series, leaving Westbrook to be the hero that we all claimed him to be. And he was god awful. He couldn't even buy a bucket to save his life. He was terrible. He was god awful. Bad shot selection, like questionable decision making, no playmaking, and of course, there's another thing that's the problem between not only Westbrook but also Harden. They do not like to play off ball when necessary. You never see them play off ball. You hardly see them play defense. I mean, don't get me wrong. Harden plays defense, but like when he wants to, and he doesn't do it on a consistent basis. Westbrook pretty much plays no defense at all. Like, if he doesn't want to. And you see it like when he doesn't have the ball in his hands. They clearly don't want to play off-ball movement. They don't cut to the rim. They don't set up screens. They just stand with their hands on their knees and stand on the three-point line doing nothing. That's the problem. And, of course, the Lakers would finish off the Rockets in 5 games in the semifinals last season. And that was the end of the Westbrook-Harden era as we all know it. Because a couple weeks ago, Harden was asking for another star teammate in John Wall. So the Rockets traded away Russell Westbrook to the Washington Wizards in exchange for former All-Star point guard John Wall, who was on another terrible contract, was just as bad as Westbrook's, and a first-round pick. So here you go. Now here we are with the Rockets in a whole new different look. Daryl Morey stepped down as general manager after 14 long years with the organization and doing the best he could to put James Harden in the best position to get to the NBA Finals and possibly win an NBA title. And he stepped down. He's now currently the president of basketball operations for the Philadelphia 76ers. Mike D'Antoni and the Rockets parted ways as he took an assistant coaching job under Steve Nash with the Brooklyn Nets. And now you have a new head coach in Steven Silas and a new general manager whose name I forgot about. I apologize for that. And all of a sudden, the Rockets are stuck in a big hole that I don't think they can get out of, because now James Harden wants to be traded himself. I mean, yeah, I know you're frustrated with the fact that the team's not doing well and you did the best you could to get over the hump, and it still hasn't been enough. But still, you're also the problem, dude. And why I say that is because you really haven't delivered on the biggest of moments when it needed the most. You're a hell of a player in the regular season, but when it comes to the playoffs, you're like non-existent. And we've seen that throughout the years with James Harden, and that's just unfortunate. So no Daryl Morey, no Mike D'Antoni. You gave away Chris Paul for Russell Westbrook, and you even signed DeMarcus Cousins to a one-year deal. We'll just see how Boogie Cousins does in Houston. Even though both Wall and Cousins in their first time back in action after sitting out for like 1 to 2 years respectively, they look really great so far this preseason. James Harden was recently spotted at a nightclub tossing out money, literally at a strip club. And he came to practice and is playing his first preseason game extremely out of shape, like fat and whatnot. I'm just sitting here like, oh my God, this dude's really not into it. So, looking at the numbers and looking at the co-stars that he's paired with, he's much more of the solo guy by himself and just have a bunch of shooters that he can throw it out to. It's a boring system, and it's difficult for role players. Hell, you can even ask Austin Rivers, Danielle House, and Eric Gordon, who's still on the team, about their roles in Houston for the last several years. They're miserable. Plus the contract situation with PJ Tucker, it's become a mess, as we all know it. And now James Harden wants to be out of there, as he prefers to be traded to either Brooklyn, Miami, Milwaukee, and Philadelphia. Now, Philadelphia's not going to go after James Harden because they're going to throw in either Ben Simmons or Joel Embiid in the trade, and I know they don't want to give him up. Either one of them. Milwaukee, why would you even bother? Because you already got Drew Holiday, and you're already a championship contender, as we all know it. Miami, you could with throwing either Tyler Harrell or Duncan Robinson, or throw both in there if you really want to, and a couple first rounders to get James Harden, which you could, but the fit, I don't know. And then you have Brooklyn. I mean, you probably might throw Kyrie Irving in there, who's barely going to play for the first time with Kevin Durant now back and healthy. And they look really great in preseason as well. Kyrie just got to Brooklyn. Now you're probably going to throw him in there for James Harden? No, even Kyrie don't want him because they know exactly what he's made of. James Harden is a system within himself, and it is not going to get better if he keeps up like this. Here's the reason why teams don't even want him. Because if you get him, you're going to have to maneuver your way to fit a certain style that fits his criteria. And that's a problem. So with that being said, the Rockets are a disaster. And I don't know how this is going to look for them going forward. I think the championship window is closing as we speak. And it's just unfortunate. So, yeah. So, yeah, James Harden, I just think he's the problem as well in Houston as Russell Westbrook was, as many other was. Mike D'Antoni put together the best oriented system around him, and Daryl Morey put arguably the best rosters around him as best as possible to help him out, but he also has to be held accountable too. And yet, even with all that, even when the supporting casts are non-existent, James Harden was non-existent himself, and he just doesn't deliver in the biggest of moments. Now, I'm sorry, but the Rockets are pretty much done with, as we all know it. I mean, we'll see what happens with Harden and Wall and probably Boogie Cousins. But other than that, the championship window is closing, and I don't see them recovering from this point forward. So that's just the reality of the situation, man. So, anyways, that's all I have for today's video. Like I said, make sure to hit the like and subscribe button. Make sure to hit that bell icon button where you get my notifications and when I'm going to upload my next video. And let me know what you think in the comments section. Like, do you think the Rockets are pretty much done with, or do you think there's still some life in it? Like, what do you think of the situation? So, yeah, with that being said, I'm Nick Johnson, your favorite sports YouTube journalist, and I'm out. Peace.